Good day, dear students, and welcome to lesson number 9 of your online English language class. I'm your teacher, Ms. Rabia Javed. Today's lesson is about your CIE O-Levels English Language Paper 1, Section 2, which is Composition Writing. I will be giving you tips on writing a narrative for your CIE O-Levels English Language Paper 1, Task 2. Earlier on, Task 2 was called Creative Writing, but now it has been renamed to Composition Writing. In Section 2, you are given 5 different questions, out of which there is a choice and you have to attempt only one. Most of the students tend to choose or write a narrative, which is the most common or the most easiest form of writing, and it has a lot of room for creativity. Alright, now what is narrative writing? A narrative is a story containing specific elements that work together to create interest for not only the author, that is the writer, but also the reader. Now this type of writing makes the reader feel as if he or she were part of the story, as if it was being told directly to him or her. Elements of narrative writing. Now, by the word elements, we mean what are the important things that should be there in your narrative. The first thing is the plot. Now, what is a plot? I'll give you details. The who, what, where, when, why, and how outlines that gives the narrative direction. That is, who, your character, who was there, what happened, where did it happen, when did it happen, why did it happen, and how did the story take place. This is what your narrative or your story is based on. What is the story about? You have to give details. You have to let the reader know what your story is going to be about. What is the main idea? What is the topic? Events unfold as they happen. You must have read plenty of stories, and you must have seen how the writer tends to keep certain things secret. I'm sure using your this time of pandemic, this time of lockdown, you must have seen plenty of movies. It's not that in the very beginning your writer discloses everything. No. Your story, your movie, the story of the movie keeps on unfolding as the movie gradually progresses. The frame of the narrative, that is, the different aspects, what is happening over there. Now, we come to the plot structure of narrative writing. Remember, every story has a beginning, middle, and an end. So, the beginning. Remember, your beginning should be enticing. By the word enticing, we mean captivating. You should have an enticing opening to capture readers' interest. I wonder if you guys remember in grade 6, I keep mentioning previous years because that was something I did with you guys personally. In grade 6, you learned a technique of hook writing. I hope you can recall it. A hook is the opening sentence of your, creative work. If your first sentence hooks the reader, that is, captures the reader's attention, then the reader is bound to read till the end. So, an important hooking, captivating opening matters. Number 2. Setting should be revealed. You should let the readers know where the story is taking place so that they can create or they can visualize the situation or where the story is set. Then, main characters should be introduced. You should make sure that you're introducing the main characters. Later on, you can add more characters, but you should mention who is your main character of the story. Then conflict should be presented in the beginning. Okay, make sure that you give the problem in the very beginning. The problem should be given, okay, so that the reader knows how later on he should expect how the story is going to unfold. So what are the 4 important aspects that you should cover in the beginning? The opening, the setting, the introduction of characters, and the presentation of the problem or the conflict. Next is the middle. In the middle, the characters should attempt to resolve conflicts or problem. The characters are going to look for solution to their problem. And then action progresses sequentially, step by step. Remember to keep your actions organized. When your action is not in a sequence, the reader feels, you can say the reader loses interest, okay? You wouldn't want to mention the ending first and then go back and then come back to what you were saying and then move over to what happened next and then return. You see, that makes confusion. All right. Also in the middle portion, you should give the climax. The climax should also be presented. Now, what is the climax? The climax is the turning point of the narrative, where the things are going to change. The climax also reveals the process involved for solving the conflict. Okay? That is, for example, think of a movie. How a movie slowly and steadily progresses. Let's take an example of a horror movie, let's suppose, because most of the students like to write about a horror situation. What happens? Some children, in the beginning, you're going to set the scene. Let's suppose they were going on a trip, or they were stranded on an island, blah blah, whatever. And eventually what happened? They were now going to look for a way out of the island, or they came across, or let's suppose about think of the Scooby-Doo movie or cartoon. You see what happens? They always reach a place where something dangerous happens, and then they are trying to look for the solution, how to, who is the monster, etc., etc. And then at the climax, what happens? The monster is trying to catch them, or he is almost grasping them, ready to kill them. But what happens? They unfold the story. Now, the climax is where everything is at its peak, ready to move towards the end. Okay. Now, in the ending should tell how the resolution of the conflicts have affected the character. Okay? That is, how the different characters joined together to solve the problem, and what was the outcome, or how did that solution affect the characters. Did they learn something from it? Did they improve themselves, or what happened to them? Now, in the end, make sure that you do not introduce any new characters or plot ideas. Your story should come to a good conclusion, should not mention new characters. Yes, like the Scooby-Doo movie, you can introduce or you can reveal the true identity, but yet again, I'll give you the example of Scooby-Doo. You have seen the person who is usually the monster is usually shown somewhere in the beginning of the story. The theme or the message should be clearly understood by the reader. The theme was something that you introduced in the beginning. Remember? Remember, what is the story about? this thing is similar to what the story is about. Okay? I hope I haven't confused you with anything. All right, let's move on. The elements of narrative writing. Now, we're done with the plot. We are now going to come to the characters. The people, animals, or inanimate objects who are affected by the actions of the plot or who are the cause of certain events. Okay? You're going to mention all the people. If there's an animal, there's an inanimate object, because sometimes, for example, in recent years, a question was given where you were, like, the basic question was that you have to write a story where a map plays an important role. Okay, so now the map is an inanimate object. You can be told that write a story where a deer plays an important role. Okay, sometimes even a dialogue is given and you have to somehow use that dialogue in your story effectively. Okay, characters, are they real or are they imaginative? Okay, characters, whether real or imaginative, should be brought to life through the narrative. That is, you should use such descriptive words, or you should use appropriate dialogues to bring the character, make the character feel alive. You must have read plenty of stories. You must have read Harry Potter, which is a wonderful example of narrative writing. Okay, you must have seen how Harry and his friends and even his enemies, they have been described so wonderfully that you can see or you can visualize a clear image of the character in your mind. Now, the last point is, if a character is not described well, the story will not be believable. Okay, so why is this point important? Because of this. If you will not bring your character to life, the story will not be believable. All right. Next comes the setting. Setting is where and when the narrative or the story takes place. I wonder if you remember, in your grade 6, you were given a short story where a girl had lost her father. Her name was Alex, and she had lost her father in the forest, and she was looking for him. And as she was feeling hot and humid, and as she moves forward, a tower looms into view. Do you remember that? Exactly the same thing. We learned setting over there. We learned to set the scene. Now, what does the setting do? It allows the reader to visualize the scenes and the characters in those scenes. Okay? It helps create a vision a clear picture in the reader's mind. Although the setting may be clear for the author, he or she must create a picture for the readers. Okay? Whatever is, as a writer, going on in your head is not something I can read until and unless you will not jot it down in words. Okay? So make sure you use your words sensibly to create a wonderful picture for the reader. Okay? Let's move on.